in a divided government situation, unlike we had 2 years ago, where Democrats had the unfettered power in Washington. Now it's split. Republicans have the majority in the House, Democrats still have the majority in the Senate, and then of course our president is a Democrat. And along with that comes a lot of frustration. So one of the reasons I ran for office was I was disgusted with Republicans when they had unfettered power. I thought they blew it, they spent too much money, they didn't balance their books. I felt that way when the Democrats had unfettered power. And so now we're kind of at, I don't know where we're at. We're not getting a lot done because we just see the world differently in the two chambers. I can tell you in the House, we've gone about our business. We passed a budget earlier this year, which I'm sure you all read about. It cut $6 trillion, had fundamental tax reform as a piece to that, where we eliminated loopholes in the attempt to get folks like GE, who are paying zero income tax, back on the rolls, and then also get that 51%, get them jobs and get them back on the rolls as well. So just a broader based, fairer, simpler tax code was embedded in our budget, as well as $6 trillion in cuts. That went to the Senate, where it died an untimely death. I think it was probably a straight party line vote, and that went down. So we still have no budget back from the Senate to conference on. Normally they pass theirs, we pass ours, and then you work out their differences. We've never gotten anything back. So then the next kind of major hurdle was just this last week or so when we ran out of money. On August 2nd, just like all of you, we have a checking account, and it went, in the red again. We didn't have any more money in the bank account. And as I suggested, we've got two chambers that just see things dramatically different. The Senate, wanted to raise taxes. The House wanted to make cuts. And finally, we settled on a bill that cut $2.5 trillion in a couple different tranches. One now, one again at the beginning of next year. No one's happy with it, but I think everybody felt like we could go past the August 2nd deadline and spend 40%, 40 cents of every dollar, where 40% of our bills wouldn't get paid. But they would accrue. We would obviously owe them at some point. They'd accrue interest, which would cost the government even more, so that didn't seem like a wise thing. And the fact is, after August 2nd, the same people were still around the table. You still had President Obama, the Vice President, Joe Biden, Harry Reid in the Senate, and John Boehner. The faces aren't changing until the American people change them at the next election, which is November 2012. So I think that's why everybody just said, get this behind us. And probably on a going forward basis, what can we expect? I think everybody's looking for what it is that we can agree on, because we see things so differently. Like I said, the Democrats in the Senate wanted to raise taxes to solve the budget issue. House Republicans wanted to cut, and neither side is going to give on those things. And so one of the things I suggested at the last stop was that I think we can find agreement on is some free trade agreements, which would have a huge economic impact to our nation, and in particular the 2nd District here in Kansas in our state, where we could start exporting to Colombia, Panama, the South Korea, and do so without tying ag producers' hands behind their backs, because we can compete with anybody if we don't handicap our own people. So if we level that playing field, the president has said he's supportive of those, but how this works, unlike regular legislation, which is given life in the body, either the House or the Senate, the free trade agreements have to come up from the administration. The Senate or the president has to send them up for us to ratify them. So I'm still hopeful that that is something that we can do to help the economy, help jobs, especially help Kansas in the coming months. And then there'll just be continued wrangling over, I think, job creation and how we get this economy moving. House, we see 3 barriers to job creation, being taxation, regulation, and litigation. And so we have passed things again over in the Senate that have not been enacted or even voted on. We'll just continue to probably put pressure. You can get something done if you have something to come back and conference on. But if you keep sending things over and they don't even vote on them, then there's very little that can move forward. So that's probably just a real quick summary of where we've been and what I see for the months ahead. I'm going to turn this deal over to all of you to see what ideas that you might give me to arm myself as I head back to help. Anybody want to be brave?
If they're going to take the subsidy away from ethanol,
Yes.
why can't they take the same amount or get away from oil?
Well, that in our fundamental tax reform, it would take all of the tax expenditures, the loopholes away, lower the rate for everybody, and that's how you make it revenue neutral. So it's not a net tax increase. It's just people that are getting away not paying any taxes, like GE, now all at once pay something. And the response from that proposal has been very good. From what I understand, businesses, ag producers, it seems like everybody is pretty much on board for if you can simplify my tax system so I don't have to incur a huge cost just to have my taxes done, and eliminate some of those loopholes and bring my rate down, they're supportive of that. So I'd be interested to know.
I bet the ethanol industry as a whole, they say they're going to take it from at the farmer's side, where we just build all these plants.
Right. That's a tax expenditure, a loophole that we have in our tax code. It would be eliminated, as would a whole lot of other things, accelerated depreciation and just a whole lot of things would be swept in with that. And we've been having hearings on the House side because it was in our budget bill. We've been having hearings on that front since January. And like I said, I have run across very few individuals or corporations, businesses that don't think that that's the direction we need to go.
Well, I mean,
it's fair.
The television always tells you all these things that was getting all these.
Right.
And they was only getting $5 billion, and the oil and gas is getting $19 billion.
Yeah.
So that's like.
Yep, and the list goes on and on and on with people that have paid lobbyists to go get special deals. I mean, we did this back in the 80s, and I'm a CPA, so it's job security for me to have the most confusing tax code known to man, but it's a horrible thing for all of you, and I think it needs to be fixed. And so we did this in the 80s. All of these freebies got added to the tax code. We cleaned it up and brought it back. Now, over time, that's happened again. People paid lobbyists to go get, some pretty sweet tax deductions or special credits or the like. And it's time to even the playing field again and put us all back on a simpler, fairer, flatter plane.
When the CEO of Intel went before a congressional committee, from what I've read, and he said that he was building a new plant, and he would build it in America or overseas. He didn't care which place, but it was going to cost him an extra $1 billion to build it in America.
Right.
Because of taxes.
That's exactly what I'm suggesting.
Taxes and regulation.
The taxes, regulation, litigation, they will, I am convinced Americans can compete with anyone, any day of the week. We can do it better, cheaper, faster, but you can't do it when the policies in our nation tie both hands behind your back. And you get sued every time you get turned around. The taxes are not comparable to other nations. We have the highest corporate income tax of anywhere in the world.
By about 10%.
Yeah, I mean,
But
in the world? And regulation, don't get me started on the regulation.
But why don't they understand that if they build that plant in America, which they're not, they're building it overseas, it's already under construction. But if they build it in America, they're gonna gain a lot more taxes from the individuals that work for that plant, plus all the other benefits.
The
that
federal
go-
government? Well, I think there are some that do, but we really, again, we have this huge ideology divide in Washington because I believe it's private industry that creates jobs. They build plants and they create jobs, and so many of the Democrats in the Senate believe the federal government creates jobs through stimulus programs or the like, and I just think that's wrong. So while I'm focused on eliminating just the out-of-control, unnecessary, ridiculous regulation, making the tax code fair, dealing with tort reform, they just don't see it that way. We just see the world differently. And therein lies the challenge in trying to find any common ground these days that we can move forward
I'm
on.
really not interested in common ground. I'm interested in common sense. I mean, that's.
Well, unfortunately, when you go back to government class, though, we can't do it in the House. The Senate has to agree and the President has to sign it. So that's why we kind of have gridlock right now, because while we're standing firm, they're standing firm, nothing is going to move.
There's been a lot of times in the last years that gridlock was great. Not now.
Well, I will tell you, after spending my first term watching Obamacare be enacted, cap and trade passed the House, we bailed things out, spent cash for clunkers, and all I could do is sit there and vote no, and you couldn't stop it. We offered alternatives. They wouldn't even get a vote on the alternative packages to address the issues. So you know what? Gridlock to me looks better than that. But we have so many major issues in our nation today. This isn't going to fix it. I think the only thing that fixes it is to get a group of folks that kind of see the world similarly.
You're talking about simplicity.
In a tax code?
Well, healthcare.
Oh, okay.
6 years ago, Blue Cross Blue Shield come across TV and said they met all their obligations with 66% of their premiums that they collected. Well, the other 33 went for bonuses. Okay, you go to a doctor, sometimes they'll charge you twice as much because you have insurance.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, common sense. If a hospital is zoned, say they take care of 175,000 people, you got 1/3 there for profit that the insurance takes, 1/3 for their overhead, their buildings, all their overhead. Well, that leaves 1/3 for the hospitals. If we all pay the hospital direct, I can live with $250 a month health care. I can't afford $750. And to me, that's the answer for the health care. Zone it. Anybody that needs services, they'll go there, and if that hospital can't provide it, they send you to KU. This hospital where you're at takes care of the bill. Hospitals do their own business. They regulate themselves, and pretty soon you'll see prices go down because they'll force one another to be competitive. And I know it's going to step on a lot of toes, but you can't tax everybody to line everybody's pockets.
Are your windows up? Because it is pouring.
But that's my
Let's talk.
concern.
Yeah, that's one approach,
It's-
and I am hopeful that we have an opportunity to have this debate again, because as you know, the health care bill passed there last year. The majority of it will be implemented in a couple years, but there are some major hurdles that have to be cleared first, because over 50 of the states are suing, saying it's unconstitutional. And it's my belief that there is a 50-50 chance that could be deemed unconstitutional. If you don't have money to be able to put food on the table and
Right.
put clothes on your back, what government can tell you have to buy insurance before you can do that?
Well,
I mean,
you can go to a doctor, dentist, whatever, and most people out here, they can make a living in a small town like this with a family of 4 on